Welcome to This Woman's Work. My name is China B, and I am your host and producer. I just want to say that this series is dedicated for women of all ages, backgrounds, colors, you name it. In some episodes, you will need a tissue. In some episodes, we're going to be dying of laughter. But the goal is to make sure that you and I are genuinely working from the inside out so that we're all at a place where we can become the women that we're called to be. This episode is titled The Art of Starting Over. And today we have a special guest, Jazmine Smith. Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty well. Jazmine is the founder of Icons League, sports league, right?
Yep.
Hockey,
Field hockey and lacrosse.
field hockey and lacrosse. I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a true honor, and especially with what you're doing and breaking ground. So I commend you on this.
Thank you so much. So I heard a little bit about your story, and I just thought it was inspiring, and it just truly embodied like the art of starting over because it's an art.
It is.
It's very humbling sometimes, and sometimes you're ready for it, and sometimes you just get pushed into it.
Yeah.
But you embody that, and I just love every part of your story, and I just want you to just share it with all of us, hopefully to inspire us, to show us how great God is, and how great He has been to you
Yeah.
through life, getting you through things.
Yes.
And I'm just ready to dive in because I'm just so excited. I'm so excited. So
Okay.
please share.
So, I'm a young woman, I'll say, even though I'm of age, that, was blessed with a different type of rendering. I was raised in a very Southern Geechee Baptist household by my grandparents. I was born in North Philly, and my grandparents had moved out of North probably like in the mid 70s. And my mother, after graduating college, resided still in North Philly. But she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and lost her eyesight due to that diagnosis. So in about 1980, we moved out into Villanova, Radnor, where my grandparents resided. They became her guardian and, caregiver and my guardian as well. And it was different because in the 80s, we grew up with the Huxtable family, so the traditional black family was, two parents, all your grandparents and your brothers and sisters. Mine was two grandparents, my mom's side, and a mother being a disabled woman, and myself in a very affluent 90210 area, right? So I just was raised in a different compassion with regards to how life with perspective. My mom was in and out of hospitals, so it gave me a level of empathy with things. But my grandparents were truly the embodiment, and alongside with my godmother, Minnie, who's deceased, we called them the Trinity because they worked together with raising me. And so if I wasn't home, or playing sports, I was in North Philly or West Philly. And that was like every week in the summer. My grandfather was very much like, you're going to have all the opportunities of life, because of where you live. But I don't want you to be this token black that is not aware of, everyone else. Because just because you're in a city doesn't mean that you live in an impoverished environment. And so they did not want me to become like many that, live in our lifestyles. So, it was, I was in church, every weekend or weekday, because God knows our family's church is 20th and Dolphin. And being raised by deacon and deaconesses of that era was different. It was a whole discipline. It was a whole commitment, like of God and reverence. And I didn't realize, but later on it was going to prepare me for, what was happening in life. And I continued, playing sports. My grandmother introduced me to field hockey and lacrosse at an early age now. And, for her being from the South that didn't know about these two sports, but she knew that those sports were going to give me the opportunity, and I continued playing sports in college with basketball and field hockey. So I'm on full scholarship. So as a collegiate athlete, I understood the componencies of what sports can do.
Which college did you go to? I'm sorry.
So I initially was supposed to go to UNC. I rescinded my offer when my grandfather was diagnosed to have a quadruple bypass, and we didn't think he was going to make it. And by the time I rescinded the offer, all the Big Five schools had no money on the table. So I had to go to a Division II, which was Kutztown University. And Kutztown definitely served its purpose for the time that I was there. So I went there, and then I got an offer to work for Kobe Bryant. And I left Kutztown and moved out there. And that's where I really dabbled with the sports marketing capacity, working with a lot of the greats, not only Bean, but, Kevin Garnett, Tracy McGrady, and various others, and seeing life from a different lens. And then when I came back home, I started working for Russell Simmons with Def Poetry Jam. One of his first artists was Black Ice, was one of my publicists. I was his publicist. And so I was really able to understand the entertainment in the sports world.
Okay, so it worked hand in hand.
It worked hand in hand, and how to negotiate and how to pitch and, really coveting those relationships that were granted to me. And then I came home, and I became normal. And I started Icons, and I stopped. I was young. I was in my late 20s, and it was too much sacrifice. And my grandmother used to always say, like, this is your assignment. But I'd be like, yeah, okay,
So was Icons, when you first began, or you first started, was it just field hockey, or was it both still field hockey and lacrosse?
So initially when I started Icons in the mid 2000s, it was soccer.
Okay.
It was lacrosse and field hockey. And the reason why soccer, because I've always been a visionary, but I always like to do things before people. And so soccer wasn't I never played, which is even more crazier. But soccer was a sport that our community had not been invested in. And I also knew the stakes of getting in before everybody else got in. And so those were the three sports that I knew financially. Those are long money sports. So if you get your kids in sports like that, that's guaranteed money for scholarships, right? And not just in terms of collegiate, but also private schools. And so if we dominate that, then we will be able to close the financial gap for our children. So
it's still prevalent, though.
Still very prevalent.
I feel like if we had soccer, lacrosse is also a big thing that I'm starting to see more too.
Yeah.
But like anything other than just basketball
and track
and maybe a little bit of swimming, even though I can't swim.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of swimming. You know, we can do a little something different to give you just a little bit more leeway as far as options.
Yeah. And that was like one of the biggest things. So I started Icons and I was like, this is too much sacrifice. I want to live my life and be out in the club and have a good time. And that's what I did. And so, unfortunately, my grandmother got really sick and I had to stop working and I had to become a caregiver for both of them. Mm-hmm. And then a year later, my grandma transitioned. But before she transitioned, she would always say, like, Icons is your assignment. And I used to be like, baby, we just got to get you better. Like, nobody's worried about
the wrong thing, Granny.
You're worried about the wrong thing. And, she transitioned. And then me and my mother, we had to go through a series of things. At that time, Governor Corbett was our governor for Pennsylvania, and he had slashed a lot of funding for disabled persons. Mm-hmm. And I had to step into the role as an advocate and a caregiver. So here it is, I'm not working. I'm literally getting, like, my savings, because I was making six figures before, is dwindled. I'm a saver, and I'm just like, Lord, and I used to say all the time, do you know my Social Security number? I bring people to church, like, ever since I was a kid. So how are we doing?
That's me, though. I'm like,
like, why?
I'm bringing people to church. I'm telling them what you said, the word, and it's like, we would come
from a club, and I'd be like, everybody be up at 8:00, 9:00 before I pick you up. We headed to church, right? And that's how I lived, because I also knew, like, as much as I was having fun, I have to also have the relationship with God.
Yes.
Right. And so we finally, after the budget cuts, were able to get my mom back into the system. We're happy, we're celebratory, and I'm like, whoo, I'm about to get back into my life. I'm about to make these monies. And then I'll never forget, it was a sunny day. We had planned to go on a family vacation to celebrate. Mm-hmm. Like, I had come from a very large Southern family. And me and my mom had been out all day. And then I said, I forgot to get something from the market. And I said, the chicken's in the oven. I said, do you want to go with me to the market? She said, no, I'm going to stay here with the dogs. And her being blind, like she was familiar with the house.
Yeah.
And I get a call like about maybe 30 minutes later from our neighbors saying, Jazz, get home. There's a house fire in the kitchen. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, get home. So I get in the car, I drive, and our whole neighborhood was barricaded. And there were 4 districts worth of firefighters that were running up and down our whole entire corridor where we lived. And as I'm running, it's like a movie. You just see these firefighters running past me with hoses. They're not looking to see who I am, who I'm related to. They're just trying to get to the house. And I see the house, and all I remember is smoke just coming out. Every window's busted. It just looked like a scary movie. And I remember the Radnor Police Department circled around me, you know. And at this point, I'm familiar with them, but I'm just like, where's my mom? And they circled even tighter. And they were like, I was like, where's my mom? They're like, your mom had to be medevaced. And I'm like, Bryn Mawr Hospital is like 5 minutes away. And the police chief, he said, Jazmine, your mom's not going to make it. There was too much smoke. She inhaled. She had to be medevaced to Temple ICU.
I'm so sorry.
And so what they were trying to do in that covering, right, as God's protection, was they thought that I was going to pass out, right? And so because of what they perceived, but not knowing my faith, right, I was just like, boom. So we get to the temple, and my grandma's passed away. Now, my mother has been through some stuff, starting over again. You want to talk about a woman? And so with her medical conditions. And so in 2000, she had emergency brain surgery. And so she was in a coma for a week and a half. She had to learn how to walk and talk again. But the difference was when the surgeons told my grandma she wasn't going to make it, my grandma said, no weapon formed against my child shall prosper. Amen. And she looked at them. She did that color purple thing as long as, so we're all in the hallway crying profusely. And she walked out. And then my mom woke up and, had to do all those things. But the difference was my grandma wasn't there in this moment. Yeah. So everybody's in the waiting room. Everybody's going through. And the doctors say the same thing. And I'll never forget my spiritual mentor, Bridget Cunningham, who's an evangelist prophet, says, whose report you going to believe? Man's or God's? And she said, go back into that room and activate everything your grandparents taught you. And so I had to bring a CD player, all gospel music. I told all the nurses and doctors, don't you touch nothing. It's between her and God. Mm-hmm. And while the adversary is real, they would try to cut it off, put the news on. I was like, no. Keep that music. Because if she's going to change in this cultivation with God, it's going to be because of her relationship and her faith. And I remember it was like almost a month in, the doctors were putting a lot of pressure. And I was too. I was really like, should I just,
You're still pretty young at this point too.
Yeah, I'm in my 30s.
Yeah.
And so like it's a lot. And I remember sitting by the window and I heard God say, pick up the gift I gave you. I knew instantly he was talking about icons. And I prayed and I said, God, if you wake her up, I will go back to icons and I will never not return. And a week and a half later, that woman woke up and I got on the phone with USA Lacrosse and USA Field Hockey and I said, can I pick up where I started? And so that's how Icons got reborn, but it was that restarting point of that place.
Okay, so this was a lot.
That was a lot.
This was a lot, right? So this all happened even before you were like 35 at this point.
I was like 33.
That's a lot, right?
Yeah.
So did they ever say how the house fire started?
They said the chicken, it wasn't so much the chicken. They just said there was like some wiring, but it was a fairly new stove. We had never had any technical issues, or engineering issues or, electrical. There was nothing wrong with the kitchen. When the police department chief, when the investigators kept going through, for the investigation, they were like, we can't figure it out.
What's going on?
But we knew what was being figured. See, what I realized is that when you run away from your assignment, God gives you nudges. And he's like this, okay, I'll give you a nudge. Then he goes from a push And then he goes from I will flip your whole life.
It gets real.
It gets real.
Don't make me tell you twice. That's what I like to call it. Don't make me tell you again.
Yeah, and so he had to tell me again. But this time he had to tell me again in such a way that it was not just affecting me. It was then my mother. And you know, the beauty of my mom is this, like, she has used her life and the ultimate sacrifice as a mom to get me to my destiny.
Amen.
Right? In 2017, I'm not going to cry, we were interviewed by ESPN. And I remember asking my mom, because with her MS, she has short-term memory. So if you meet her, she'll say, it makes a difference. God won't give you no more than you could bear. It's constant, like, replay. But she says it always in the right, appropriate time, right? And I said, well, Mom, you can't say that. You got to give a little bit more information. And so she said, train the child in the way that he or she shall go. And they'll never depart. And I said, no, Mom, they're going to ask you questions about grandma, grandpa, the Southern Geechee household. And she just turned and she looked. She said, you don't get the right to quit when I sacrificed it all for you. She said, I could have
Don't make me cry.
fought your disease. She said, I could have, tried to figure out other options. She said, but where would you have been? She said, you had to be raised by your grandparents. You had to be raised by your godmother. And she said, so when you go out into this world, she said, you can't quit. She said, because ultimately I've been sacrificing my life for you and your destiny.
Amen.
And so, for me, she's always been the motivation without realizing the motivation until that moment when she said what she said. So
I love when you said that the firefighters thought you were going to pass out. And you said, but you didn't, because they didn't understand or know your faith. And I think that's amazing, because when things are going every which way but the way you want it to go, I'm not going to lie. It's times in my life where I looked at God like, are you here?
yeah,
Like, what did I do? You know?
my Social Security.
Yeah, what I be like, how?
Yeah.
How? You know what I'm saying? And I had to come to a point where I had to learn that we're not exempt from nothing
No.
in life, but your reaction was everything. When God tested me, and I still feel bad to this day, when he tested me in my life, I walked away. And I felt like that's crazy, because you have done everything. You have given me everything. And the moment you wanted something from me and I didn't do it, and I felt like I didn't get my way, oh, yeah, I don't know, I'm doing something different, And it's like, for you to be like, no, even in the midst of things not going my way, my faith is still strong, it's still firm.
Yeah.
And I think for you, if you didn't have that type of tenacity, it would have went a whole different way, even more, simply because once I walked away from God, I had to realize, oh, it was my faith that carried me through. Not just because I'm special and I'm like his favorite, like I think, but like, no, it was my faith.
Yeah.
And once I lost my faith and I lost my way, then things just dwindled. So the fact that you held on to that, I think like that's really inspiring more than anything.
I mean, I wouldn't if I hadn't, right, then it could have catapulted into something else, where they would have had to deal with me, being in the hospital,
Right.
And those type of registers happen fairly quickly in my brain, so.
So when you went back to Icon, what happened? Once you finally accepted that yes. And we're going to have a segment on that called Accepting Your Yes. About giving God your yes, because it's a real thing.
Giving God your yes.
Yes.
I mean, I was still, after the fire and after, Mom going to rehab and all that stuff, I got right on it. I started recruiting. I didn't even know how to start. I just remember reaching out to two of my best friends and asking them, can you help come to a park? I'm going to host a clinic. Mm-hmm. And this was at 57th and Vine. I had drove past that place for years, but and we started working with a camp, and these kids would all come out with, so much exuberant happiness just to see somebody. And then we started teaching them field hockey. And this went on for about 3 months. And I found like there was a niche. And then parents were like, well, what do you do on the weekends? I hadn't even thought that far. I was just like, I told God I was going to come back.
That's all I said.
That's all I said.
I said I was coming back. I don't know
I
nothing
didn't
else.
say anything about doing anything. So it was the clinics that were only supposed to happen. And then all of a sudden, parents were like nudging, right? The nudges. God's nudges through people. We know he uses people. And then all of a sudden, it started to become the Saturday practices. And I remember as I sat down, really laying out the foundation, because of course, when I was in my early 20s, it was different. I knew that the way that I had been successful through all the blessings that had been bestowed from me was because of how I was raised. And I wanted to really impart that into the Icons curriculum. So, I would bring a mirror to every practice, and players and parents would be like, what is this long mirror? What is she doing? And my grandpa used to have this mirror by the front of the door, and he used to always say, do your I am affirmations. And I used to hate them.
Really?
Girl.
My dad would make me do those, and I still do it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but as a
kid, yeah.
as a kid,
Yeah.
and even as a teenager, in that era, it was just like this. Like I don't understand it. He used to say all the time, like, you need to know who you be in this world. Because if you don't know who you be, when someone tells you, you will accept it. So therefore, I am. And so that's how he would start off every morning. And I added that on top of all the other curriculums, eating healthy, retooling, and stuff like that. And then it just started to catch on. And there were a lot of things, functionalities that we had to fight, biases, racism, but I was still going to make sure we finished the task.
Now, the part where, because we had a conversation and you were speaking a little bit about how, you guys had some contracts, like you guys were rolling, ESPN.
Yep.
And then you had a setback.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, we had to get through the
Mm-hmm.
whole process so they can see the end, which is a great, well, it's a continuation. It's not even an end.
It's a continuation.
Yeah.
So Icons was rolling. At this point, we're at about 7 schools. So we go into schools that don't have field hockey and lacrosse. We start teams, and then we had our club division where we travel locally, regionally, nationally, internationally. Everything was going great. Got honored by the White House 2 times by the Obamas, so got a chance to go down there. Different awards, affiliations. ESPN had came in the spring of 2017. And there were a couple of girls from Strawberry Mansion that were phenomenal athletes that had never played. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about some serious stories. And I wanted them to highlight what these sports could do for girls that didn't even know these sports exist. ESPN they brought the whole team out. And there was this athletic director who was a distant cousin, as my grandma would say, a Caucasian male, who did not like the fact that we were getting girls into college that were from the urban, quote unquote, areas. Wow. Right? He felt that the girls from Northeast, Central, the girls from George Washington, should have ample opportunities, but not these girls. And so when he found out that they were there, he prohibited them from coming into Mansion High School. And ESPN already had the contract, so they're like, well, we'll just meet you at the game. So they get to the lacrosse game, and a former referee that ref me saw me, and she said, Smith, how would you feel if your coach knew that you were coaching remedial? And I said,
Excuse
me? Well, I did the same thing. I said, what are you talking about? She said, you could stop the game and move the players wherever they need to go. And she said, this is for Mansion, Girls High, Frankfurt, Del Val, West Mass Street, King. And I literally started thinking in that moment, I said, well, what is this, the Negro League? Because it was all Black and Latino teams. So they had basically redlined. Wow. And ESPN heard that and they ran with it. So the story went from, what Icons does to now an investigation story. And this athletic director knew that if he didn't get me out, that he was going to lose his career, not just with the school district, but ESPN was going to really out him. So we lost our contract with the school district, and we lost our biggest funder. And then my top player, Nadir, who had a full ride to University of Hartford, in a guaranteed internship at ESPN, lost everything because he went to sign the NCAA eligibility paperwork. It was like everything was crushing down. Like God, like, do you see me?
I'm still, my social security number is the same. Hello.
And I'll never forget, I turned my cards back in. I secured $5,000 out of my account. I went and bought a used Volkswagen van, and I became homeless.
So you lived in the van?
Well, I lived in a van for a week, and then the ego was like, talk to your family.
Yeah.
And so I lived with my godparents, Janice and Stanley, for about 2 years because I had to secure another $80,000 to make sure that my coaches were paid. I could not lose them to my white counterparts who were breathing down my neck because we had become the threat. So I was sacrificing in ways because the oath.
Yeah.
I could have walked away. I could have done some other stuff, but it was an oath that I made to God in my mom's hospital bed.
Right.
You wake her up, I'll never turn back. And I kept my oath even with me losing everything. And a lot of people, you'll probably know now, but a lot of people didn't know that, and they just started to see like icons kind of recapitulating. And then in 2018, I was offered a position to work at Penn, and Paulette Branson put me in another hard school, and I'm like, put me at West Catholic, like don't put me at Sayre, and she was like, just trust what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And we started a team. It was like 20 something girls. And then a year later, Penn offered us a partnership, for icons, to work collaboratively together. And so all of a sudden, things were starting to realign itself. And there wasn't adversary moments,
Yeah,
and it wasn't low moments, but, God really kept me. Most people didn't know. It's what they say in church. I'm so glad I don't look like what I've been through.
Amen. Yes.
And so, we've been able to continue to have girls, go through our program. And then what came from that was Nike. In 2020, they came, and they really, had surveyed and did a thorough research of the program. And they said, we want to highlight you guys and we want to partner with you guys in a way that showcases what Black girl magic looks like, even though we have girls from every, continent, as I say.
That's beautiful, though.
But, they came in and they did a documentary and, still filming, so.
It is so much just to pull.
Yeah.
From this story, just from you, you're just so humble. You would never even think that you just have so much on your back. And then it's just like, it's crazier because your sacrifice for someone else. Like, it's one thing when it's just your dream and you going for it and it's like, I'll do whatever for my dream. But because you see so much in the future for young women, for future Black women, which is important, you are fighting for us in ways that you don't even understand. And it's like, okay, God, I'll take it. I'll do it for your will, for the larger purpose. And it's really inspiring because, again, it's easy to go through the trials and tribulations when it's for you and you're what you want out of life.
Yeah.
It's hard when it's someone that you just met.
They don't care.
They don't care. And it's like, all right, thanks, coach. See you later. I'm out. I'm doing me. And it's like, you don't even know how much I put in to get here. And again, you don't look like it. You don't act like it. And I'm about to get emotional because it's like, it's not a lot of people advocating for us.
Yeah.
And then to say, like, I lost it all, but I'm here. And now I have bigger. Like, it's just a testament to, like, what God can and will do for you. Like, listen, what you lost is nothing. Keep hitting this mic. It's nothing, though, for what I'm about to give you. And you, like, exemplify that. You're still exemplifying it.
It's trusting the process, I believe, and trusting God.
Yes.
With your eyes. Like, Pastor Wall always says, you got to trust God.
You want to eat that?
Yeah.
Okay. I go to E9 too. But
Yes.
okay, I do have another church I go to too, by the way. I love E9. I love E9, but I've been at this church for a few months. It's just like a lot more younger people.
Okay, that's okay.
But I enjoy it because I like seeing the representation too. It's Bethel Northeast.
Bethel Northeast.
Yeah, so Bethel actually has like extensions of different Bethels. So they have
it does.
Bethel Northeast, and it's like a lot of young people, but it's great. I still love Pastor Wilder though. We're not going. I love him. I still go there, but oh yes, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, but yeah.
When I see you, I'm gonna make sure I find you.
Please, I always sit on the left side.
I sit at the top.
Okay. I won't see you there unless I come with my finger. But I always say, like, well, Pastor Wilder always says, he's like, you gotta trust God even though you can't trace him.
Mm.
And I remember him saying that during one sermon, and it just like it registered. And that's what you really have to do in life, because there are going to be so many monumental moments where you won't be able to trace God, and you will ask God, like, do you know my Social Security? Do you know I brought like 18 of my friends into Christ? You know, do you, like, I'm always professing who you are, and God's like, do you trust me? And you got to trust him enough to know that on the other side of, because God's promises can never come void.
Amen.
And so if he said it to you, it's going to come to pass. It ain't going to come on our time. It's not going to come with a bow. You got to know without a question and a doubt that it's always going to be aligned in the proper place.
This is great simply because before I started this podcast, I didn't want to do it. Like, I just feel like God just kept, like, China. And the way my life was kind of set up is like, I'm counting on you. I'm waiting on you. And then once I finally gave him my yes, I'm like, I don't even know, like, why he want me, right? Every sermon I've heard since then is who's waiting on you.
Ooh.
Someone's waiting on you. Someone's waiting on you so they can get to their promise. Someone's waiting on you. I'm not making this up. Every sermon is who's waiting on you. So the fact that someone is waiting on you, and that's why I can't wait to see who and why. Like, who's waiting on me? What is this going to do for somebody? What is this conversation going to do for somebody? So, I mean, I'm excited to see that. I'm happy that you got to see, your why. But it makes me more excited to just keep pushing.
You and this platform and showing what excellence, beauty, faith looks like is going to allow a young woman or older woman or a child to be able to then step into their provisions a little bit more, by you just doing what you're doing naturally right now.
I believe that, and I received that too.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just so happy that you came. We have one little quick segment we like to call Girl Check That.
Check that.
Girl Check That.
Okay.
Right, and it's just that moment where you you've come to a moment where you realize, like, okay, either I need to stop doing this, or, I spoke something ill about myself and I need to check that.
Yeah.
So what is like a moment that you had, present, past, current, where you like, check that, like, and it can be very serious or very unserious, but.
Yeah, I had to get uncomfortable with telling my truth about losing it all. The ego is something that we all are plagued with, right? And it's a protection measure. And because of who I am, like, in terms of relationships and family ships and stuff like that, I'm very, very private. You guys can say I'm Beyonce private. Like, I don't like a lot of people to know a lot of things because that's just me. And it's not withholding. It's just like there's a sacredity that comes with, just having peace. But God can't use me if I'm not telling all of it, not what I want to. And a good friend I was sharing with, who's a coach in the collegiate level, when I was sharing, she was just like, you need to share, you need to tell. And I had to wrestle with that. And I started to wrestle with it, when I came out of survival mode.
That's
right?
Another conversation.
That's another conversation, right? And so that's when I had to check myself. And today was the first day that I'm speaking on it in this capacity. Some people know, but in this capacity, so.
And I'm just happy to be that person. Girl, check that. Oh, well, thank you so much, Jazmine. It was really, truly a pleasure to have this conversation with you. I hope I can have your number and text you sometimes and, like, because I need some help.
Yeah.
But it was just genuinely just nice talking to you. I'm so happy that you agreed, that you came on This Woman's Work.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here and to see what you're doing and knowing where you're about to go.
Thank you so much, Jazmine, for being a part of this episode of This Woman's Work. But before we end this segment, is there anything that you would like to share with the people?
Yeah, we are recruiting, girls ages 5 through 19 who would want to participate in our program to learn lacrosse and, to travel and to play and just be a part of this new experience of breaking glass ceilings and extending so much more vast opportunities in terms of just worldwide view through sports.
And where can they find you? Like website?
You can find us. Our website is www.eyekonz sports. We're on social media: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So that's the best way to find us.
Well, thank you so much. You heard it here. Make sure you guys go check out the website. And we will see you again, hopefully next week. Same time, same place, and with just different topics. Hope to see you soon. Bye.